Hello, lovely souls, and welcome to One. Let's talk. Can you honestly tell me that you've never felt fear in your life? That you've never experienced fear, ever? That you've never been afraid of anything? I don't think that's possible. See, fear is an emotion that every human being on this planet experiences. It is part of the human experience. And dare I say, it's a misunderstood emotion, which is why in today's episode, I want to talk to you about fear. Yeah? What is fear? What does it do? What is the best way for us to approach fear? How can we deal with it? How can we work with it? But first, hello, my name is Patil, and I want to help you take your power back by freeing your mind and healing your heart. Okay. Something to understand about fear is that fear comes in many different flavors. It could be something as small as, let's say, being afraid of spiders, or snakes in my case. Even though snake is my spirit animal, by the way, it's one of my main spirit animals. The other one happens to be the elephant. It is a creature that both fascinates me and frightens me. Go figure. And I want to tell you something that happened with me in 2019 that has to do with snakes as we move along in this episode. So it could be something as small as that: fear of spiders, fear of heights, fear of closed spaces, etc. Or it could creep up on you in more serious ways, like fear of being rejected, yeah? Fear of disappointing others, fear of not amounting to anything, fear of death or the unknown. So there are so many different flavors and so many different shapes, or let's say forms, that fear takes. And the reason why fear is such a powerful emotion, if you think about it, it does a great job of snatching away your power. The reason why that is, it's because it's always associated with some kind of consequence or some kind of punishment. It's been framed this way. For example, you should do this. You must do this. You have to do this. Or else. You know, there's that big scary or else that just pops up everywhere. And this comes from past programming and childhood stories that we have received growing up. Let me give you some examples, and you can obviously customize these examples based on your personal experiences. Maybe you heard your mom say, "Go to your room," or else. Or eat your greens, or else. Or maybe you heard religious people say, "Don't sin, or you'll go to hell. Don't do this, or God will punish you." Or maybe even in this day and age, you've heard some spiritual practices spread around messages like these. Be careful. Karma is watching. Karma's a bee. So we've learned to act from a place of fear, because we fear the potential consequences or quote-unquote punishments that come with it. We've been conditioned to think this way. One of the fears that I had for a very long time was the fear of failing. Better yet, the fear of being a failure. All my life, and you can even ask my mom on this, I have been a straight A student. Even in kindergarten, you can say. Kindergarten, school, high school, college, university, all of it. Now, partly because I have this thirst for knowledge, for expansion. I wanted to learn. But mainly because I was programmed to believe that I will only be loved when I get good grades. So, for a very long time, you can say that the idea of failing terrified me. In my mind, this was how it was. That I always had to meet or even exceed other people's expectations of me. Otherwise, I am not good enough and I don't deserve to be loved. So this was my inner dialogue at the time. I had this crippling fear of failing, of being a failure. Now, if you notice, I'm not really sure if you're listening to this episode on Spotify or Podbean or you're watching it on YouTube. Either way, it's the same thumbnail. If you notice, I chose Dobby to be the thumbnail for this video. See, Dobby to me is such a fascinating character. And no, this episode is not about Harry Potter, but I found Dobby to be the best example on fear for this episode. If you don't know who Dobby is, he's this male house elf who's bound to serve the Malfoy family till the end of his life. So he's this very fascinating character that is extremely powerful. That's what I love about this creature, is that Dobby has immense powers. He's incredibly powerful. But he's crippled by fear. For the most part, we see him always in this panicky mode. He's always afraid. He's always, on his toes. He's guarded. He doesn't want to spill the beans. He doesn't want to cross the line or make his masters, let's say, furious. He doesn't want to disappoint. He's always crippled by fear because he's afraid of the Malfoy family because of the consequences and the potential punishments that he receives from his masters. And that scares him. That frightens him. So this is what I find very interesting about Dobby, that not only is he personifying fear in such a wonderful way, but also that in spite of fear, we see him try to help Harry Potter on so many different occasions. So many different instances he actually puts himself out there to, warn Harry Potter, to give him certain messages, to give him the heads up, to help him. And that is so admirable. That is so brave. We're going to get to these parts in a minute. I want to talk to you about the best ways that I've found to deal with fear. So, let's jump into the meat of this talk. I have 5 main talking points on fear that I want to make in this episode. Let's start with the first. Fear is not a bad emotion. Fear is just an emotion. I want to tell you a story that is going to illustrate this point perfectly for you. This is the parable of the turtle and the scorpion. Now, I've made certain adjustments to the story. I've livened up the characters. I've added my own dialogue to it because I want to explain it in my way. So there are certain adjustments and modifications to the story. And it goes like this. One day, there was an honest scorpion that wanted to cross the lake. And it so happened that a generous, kind-hearted, innocent-looking turtle was playing by the seashore. Now, the turtle, out of the kindness of his heart, basically offered to give the scorpion a ride. And the scorpion said, "Hey, I gotta warn you, I don't think that's a good idea. But sure." And something dramatic happened along the way, and the turtle got stung. Now the scorpion justified his actions by saying, "I told you so. It's in your nature to help, and it's in my nature to sting." What do you think the moral of the story is? See, on the scale of consciousness, if you know what the scale of consciousness is, it's basically just this scale that has all the emotions and their equivalent vibrations or frequencies next to them. So, if you look at the scale of consciousness, you're going to notice that fear is just an emotion, like love, that's vibrating at a lower frequency. It is vibrating at a specific designated frequency. And it cannot vibrate at a frequency other than its own. If you take a look at the scale of consciousness, you're going to find that fear vibrates at 100. I'm not really sure what the unit of measurement here is. I will look it up, and if I find information on it, then I will share it in the comment section below. So, it's vibrating at 100. It cannot vibrate at a frequency other than that. That's just its job. So, fear is not a bad emotion. Let's remove bad from the vocabulary altogether, okay? Instead, you can say that fear is a negative emotion, and when I say negative, let me explain what I mean. It's just an emotion that takes something from you. Yeah? Just like you have peace, for example, it adds something to your life. It adds some kind of value to your life, right? Peace of mind, this inner calm sensation, this feeling of surrender and harmony. So That's what it does. The same thing can be said about fear, that it takes something from you. It takes away your power. It takes away your mental peace. It takes away your potential and your ability to flow with life, to enjoy life. So that's what I mean when I say it's a negative emotion. So it takes something from you. It doesn't add anything to your experience. That's the first point. It is not a bad emotion. It is just an emotion. It takes something from you. And here's something to help you put your mind at ease, which brings me to my second point. There are no punishments. Okay? There are no punishments when you happen to experience fear. You are not going to be punished for that. There are no consequences in that sense. There are only lessons, only cycles, only experiences that either take you toward or away from love. These are just outcomes, not punishments. See, even in physics, we talk about this, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Because life favors balance, yeah? Life likes balance. The universe likes balance. It's like a boomerang. If I'm emitting a specific type of energy, if I'm releasing a specific type of energy, I am bound to get a similar energy back. This is the law of attraction. Like attracts like. It's one of the principled fundamental laws of the universe, how this whole thing is designed. Law of attraction happens to be one of them. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If I'm emitting a vibration of fear, chances are I am going to get a similar vibration back. So the energy that you're emitting is bound to attract back to you a similar vibration. So there are no punishments, only lessons. The third point that I want to make is that fear is an important emotion. Fear is important. If you take a look at the animal kingdom, the best example that I can give you is that of a gazelle running for its life. And then you have a lion that is hunting down the gazelle, that's chasing the gazelle and wants to prey on it, right? You have a prey and a predator. What happens is that because of fear, the gazelle is able to flee and, save its life. Fear, in this case, happens to be a very powerful emotion. It's a primitive emotion. It's one that's been preserved throughout evolution, and it's part of the reptilian brain, the primitive part of the brain that we have. It's because of this fear that the gazelle is able to save its life and to survive out in the open, in the wilderness. Had the gazelle not experienced fear, then chances are it would have been the lion's dinner. So fear had to be an important emotion here to save the gazelle's life. This is why fear is important. It elicits your sympathetic nervous system, this fight or flight response within you. We call this the stress response because in times of danger or threat, it allows you to make a choice. Make a decision. Either run for your life, so that's the flight response that's being activated within you, or fight. You face it, you confront it, you overcome it in that way. Now, there is another response that is also a result of fear, and that is one of freeze. This is something that I experienced in 2019, pre-COVID. I wanted to go on this 10-day hiking challenge for myself. I wanted to try something different. It was an activity that was on my to-do list, and I finally mustered up the courage to do it. It was in Norway, and I was so happy to be part of this adventure. This was a difficult hike, if I'm being honest with you, but the landscape was so worth it. The scenery and the peace and just being exposed to a new culture, for me, it was very fascinating. And I remember this was our third day of the hike. I was at the back of the trail and I was asking questions to the guide. I was having a conversation with him. And all of a sudden, I just realized that everybody stopped moving, especially the women in the front of the trail. And they started to scream and shout and, panic. And I was like, oh my goodness, my worst nightmare just came to life. it's very likely that these women spotted a snake or two. And oh my God, what am I going to do? Moments later, there was this murmur in the crowd and everybody was panicking. And I was informed that there are two snakes. They're not too big, actually, yellowish in color, that crossed our path. And fear, enormous levels of fear, overwhelmed me, and I completely froze. I kid you not, my feet were glued to the floor, and I could not move. Seconds later, I started to cry because I was so overwhelmed with enormous levels of fear that I just needed to release it. And my body was like, okay, releasing this fear through tears is probably the best course of action for you in this moment, because I froze. I couldn't move. And I realized that the guide and, another friend of mine, they approached me and they're like, okay, if you don't want to pass by these trees, then we can just, go over this little creek that we saw on our way. It was the longer route, but it was still going to take us to our destination to meet up with the rest of the group. And I'm like, yes, anything but this path. I don't want to walk it. I'm so scared. And they held my hand, and this is how I overcame it. What's really fascinating to me is that the snake is my spirit animal. It's one of my main spirit animals alongside the elephant. They're both very important to me. And I've had a lot of dreams and visions related to the snake that have come true. It's like they've carried with them some kind of futuristic messages, and they've all come true. But at the same time, it scares the hell out of me. It frightens me so much. So this is just to tell you that fear can also elicit a freeze response within you. So in that sense, it is important because it is helping you decide what to do. It is activating your sympathetic nervous system so that you can do something about this condition that is eliciting fear within you. It's creating some kind of uncomfortable emotion within you. So it is a catalyst for some kind of activity, some kind of change, some kind of growth moment or expansive experience. And that was my third point, that fear is an important emotion. The fourth point is this. We usually act from two main emotions, either love or fear. Hate is not the opposite of love, by the way. It's fear. So it's either love or fear. And this reminds me of Stan Dale's quote that I absolutely love, and I've been using this for quite some time. It says, all human behavior is either an act of love or a cry for one. In other words, it's either a result of love or a byproduct of fear. Here's how I want to explain it to you. We have two natures. We have a human nature, and then we have a divine spiritual nature. So on this 3D physical plane, we have two natures. And each nature, each of these two, basically has a language, has a code. Yeah? If love is the language of your spiritual nature, of your divine nature, then fear is a prominent emotion, is a very dominant emotion that is part of the human experience. It's part of the human nature. You can say that fear is an emotion that is very unique to us beings living on the 3D plane. That includes the animal kingdom as well. So it's a very prominent emotion in that sense. If love is the language of the higher self, then fear is the language of the ego. And no, the ego is not bad. It is not the enemy. You can listen to my previous episode where I talk about this in depth, and I explain to you why that is not the case. So like I said, you have two key emotions, love and fear. And here's the interesting bit. Love is an innate knowing. Fear is learned. You learn fear. Fear is an emotion, like I said, that is very specific to the human experience, to the human nature. It is something that we learn as we incarnate and we, come to this planet to learn and to grow and to evolve. It is not something that is part of the spiritual divine nature. I mean, take a look at babies. Up to a certain age, let's say to the age of 3, when they're not yet brainwashed or programmed with these limiting fear-based thoughts and ideas and beliefs, a child is very much driven with life and passion. It's full of vitality, right? They are so open to life. They are radiating love in all its forms. They don't know fear. When they're hungry, they know how to express themselves. They cry or shout or kick and scream because they have an unmet need that needs to be met. So they do this very fearlessly, very boldly. They take up that space. When they're happy, they're having fun and they're enjoying the moment, everybody knows that they're having a good time, right? They're smiling, they're laughing, they're, making all kinds of sounds that imply that they're having a good time. So they're fearless. They are full of love, full of life. Nobody teaches them to be that way. They're just born this way. That's who they are. Because up to the age of 3, and I talk about this extensively in my academy, I've dedicated an entire module on fear because it is a crippling emotion. But if we know how to deal with it, it does wonders. So up to the age of 3, our chakras are open, basically, which means that we're still connected to the spirit world in a much more profound way, in a deeper way, in a much more open way. So the channels are still open. We are connected to the spirit world. And like I said, love is that language. So it just flows through us with ease, effortlessly. That's how it is with children. So that's the 4th point. It's either love or fear. And that brings me to the 5th point, that you have a choice. Love and fear, these are 2 very prominent, very key emotions, very powerful, fundamental emotions. One vibrates, let's say, at 100 on the scale of consciousness, and the other one, love, vibrates at 500. And they're both available to you in any given moment. In this present moment, both of them are there. They're available to you. It just becomes a matter of choosing. It's a choice. So how do we approach fear? What can we do? How can we deal with fear? First of all, remove all labels, yeah? Just remove all labels, remove all judgments on fear. Stop viewing fear as this monster that's coming to get you. No. Like I said, it's not a bad emotion. It's just an emotion vibrating at its designated frequency. That's the first thing. Remove all labels. Second, give yourself permission to feel the fear. It's there, right? Feel it. Give yourself permission to feel it, whatever that fear is. You're afraid of being alone? Okay, feel it. You're afraid of not being loved? Feel it. You're afraid of failing? Feel it. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to feel it. And then what? Well, remind yourself that these 2 emotions, they're both available to you in this moment. Which vibration, which frequency do you want to step into? Which state of mind do you want to step into? Can you give yourself permission to step outside of your comfort zone in spite of fear? Whatever that looks like for you. Can you give yourself permission to transition from fear and slowly, gradually, at your own pace, step into love? And that's going to be different for every single one of you. Can you, for example, give yourself permission to send that romantic text that you've been meaning to start your own business that you've been wanting to book that ticket, or to buy that expensive thing, or to ask for that raise, or to say no for once? Can you give yourself permission to do these things in spite of fear? And it's not going to be comfortable at first. It's okay. Because unlike love, fear is a limiting emotion. It limits you. It's not punishing you, but it's just doing its thing, which is it's limiting you. It's keeping you safe and comfortable in your own bubble, in your own little comfort zone. Take a look at Dobby. Dobby from Harry Potter, he felt the fear. He was controlled by fear, for the most part. In so many instances, we see him controlled by fear. But he still chose to act in spite of fear. He chose to move into the vibration of love. His love for Harry Potter. His love for the good of things. His love for life. I think the moral of this episode is that be like Dobby. Feel the fear, but act in spite of it. Choose love. We always have a choice. Will you take your cues from fear or love? Thank you so much for listening. I really wanted to talk about fear and clear up some of the misinterpretations that we have on fear and just tell you what it is. That fear is a misunderstood emotion. No need to condemn it or criticize it, because once we understand it, then we can work with it. So if you want my help, you have your own fair share of fears that you want to overcome and work with, then you can sign up for coaching with me. I am offering 3 different types of coaching right now. You can go for email coaching. It's a package where you get to send me an unlimited number of emails around any subject. I know that a lot of people like to express themselves better in writing. You can also go for phone calls with me once a week or twice a week. These are more interactive sessions via Zoom. It depends on your preferences. Or you can sign up for a singular session with me, an extensive session where we get to come up with a game plan for you and see how to best approach the subject that you want to talk about for you. Like I always say in all my episodes, that these are just my thoughts. These are things that resonate with me at this point in time. And I've seen them work for me, for my loved ones, and the people that I work with. If they resonate with you, great. They're your messages. If not, let them go with love. If you like content like this, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. So I'm posting these episodes on YouTube as well, or to Spotify or Podbean. The last thing that I want to say is this. Take this as a rule of thumb. Every time you succumb to fear, you declare war on love. Another way to put it is this. You will only give in to fear when you're at war with love. Remember, you are in it, but you've already won. Till next time.